The Texas sun was a hammer on my head, beating down on the vast, unforgiving plains. Dust coated everything, tasting of dry earth and distant sagebrush. I, John Miller, was just doing my usual rounds, riding Buster along the meandering creek bed, checking my fence lines. My life out here was simple, solitary, just the land, my horse, and me. Then I saw it. A dark, shapeless mass, half submerged in the muddy runoff from that last pitiful rain. My gut clenched. "What in tarnation?" I muttered, pulling Buster to a halt. Dismounting, my boots sank into the soft, clinging mud. As I got closer, my breath hitched in my throat. It wasn't just debris. It was a child. A girl, no older than 12, lay sprawled, her flimsy dress plastered to her rail-thin body. Her face was caked in mud, eyes half closed, lost in a daze of utter exhaustion and fear. A faint, metallic clinking sound, almost swallowed by the viscous mud, reached my ears. Chains. My blood ran cold. An ugly, fresh welt discolored her cheek. I'd seen a lot of hard things in my years out here, but this was different. This was a brutal, sickening horror. A cold, righteous fury, unfamiliar and potent, began to simmer deep inside me. I knelt, the mud sucking at my knees. "Hey there, little one," I said, my voice surprising even myself with its gentleness. "Are you all right?" Her eyes, wide and bloodshot, flickered open, filled with an animalistic terror I'd seen in trapped deer. She tried to flinch away, but her small body was too weak, too heavy with mud and weariness. A tiny, almost inaudible whimper escaped her lips. I looked at her, truly looked, and saw not just a child, but a shattered spirit. In that moment I knew. My solitary life, the quiet routine I'd built, was about to be turned upside down. Her silent plea had sealed both our fates. I had to help her. There was no other choice. I carefully scooped the emaciated girl from the clinging mud. She was shockingly light in my arms, almost nothing. I cradled her gently as I helped Buster, then settled her securely in front of me on the saddle. The ride back to my remote ranch was slow, deliberate. The only sounds were the creak of worn leather and her shallow, ragged breaths against my chest. She lay limp, occasionally shivering, but never looking up. "What's your name, child?" I asked softly, my voice barely above a whisper. It took a long moment, but a tiny, almost inaudible sound escaped her lips. "Sarah," I repeated the name, letting it hang in the air between us, a whisper of a promise. She spoke little more, her eyes darting nervously, constantly scanning, like a trapped bird. The chains on her ankles, though no longer dragging in the mud, seemed to be etched into her very being. Back at my humble cabin, I wasted no time. I stoked the fire in the hearth, filling a large basin with water to heat. I rummaged through an old trunk, pulling out some of my late wife's simple, clean clothes, a cotton dress, a soft shawl. They'd be too big, but at least they were dry. While the water heated, I prepared a simple meal. Thick, hearty stew and fresh-baked bread. "Here, Sarah," I said, offering her the bowl. She looked at it suspiciously, her eyes wide, as if she expected it to be snatched away. "It's for you, all yours." She ate slowly, meticulously, her small hands trembling slightly as she brought the spoon to her lips. The warmth of the food, the crackling fire, and my silent, unwavering presence slowly began to thaw the ice around her heart. I didn't press her for details of her ordeal. I just existed, a quiet anchor in her storm-tossed world. I knew those chains weren't just metal. They were fear, distrust, and the weight of unspeakable cruelty. I would have to earn her trust, one quiet moment, one gentle gesture at a time. But out here, news travels faster than a prairie fire, and soon I knew the wrong ears in Redemption Creek would hear about Sarah. The small, dusty town of Redemption Creek hummed with gossip. News, like that relentless desert wind, carried far and wide. It didn't take long for the whispers about a runaway girl at John Miller's ranch to reach the ears of Silas Blackwood. His name hung heavy in the air around here, synonymous with vast cotton fields, brutal overseers, and a chilling disregard for human life. I'd always kept my distance from his kind. Sure enough, 2 days later, 2 grim-faced riders, heavily armed and smelling of stale whiskey, arrived at my gate. Blackwood's enforcers. Their leader, a hulking brute named Jed, dismounted with a swagger, his eyes cold and devoid of empathy. He spat a stream of tobacco juice onto the parched earth, narrowly missing my boot. "Heard you got something of ours, Miller," Jed sneered, his voice a low growl. "A runaway, a valuable piece of Blackwood's property." He slowly unbuttoned his holster flap, his hand hovering over the butt of his pistol. It was a clear threat. I stood firm, my hand subtly resting on the stock of the rifle leaning against my porch post. My voice was steady, betraying none of the tremor in my gut. "She was found, half dead in the mud. She's no one's property now, not in my eyes." Jed laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. "Your eyes don't matter out here, Miller. Blackwood wants what's his. You hand her over now, or there'll be trouble. The kind of trouble you ain't never seen." Inside the cabin, I heard Sarah gasp. She must have been listening, her small body trembling with renewed fear. She pressed herself against the wall, those old terrors resurfacing. My resolve hardened. "She stays," I stated, my voice ringing with a quiet, unwavering conviction. "She's a child, Jed, a human being, and she's under my roof. You ain't taking her." The tension in the air was palpable, thick as molasses. Jed's hand moved to his pistol, but my grip tightened on my rifle. The enforcers exchanged glances. They knew I wasn't just some fool. With a final chilling sneer, Jed remounted his horse. "You've made a powerful enemy today, Miller. Blackwood don't forget, and he always gets what's his." They rode off, leaving a cloud of dust and the unspoken threat of what was to come. I knew then. I had picked a fight I might not win alone. The entire county would soon be talking and choosing sides. The confrontation with Blackwood's men left me with a stark realization. I couldn't face this fight alone. The power of a man like Blackwood was vast, his influence insidious, reaching into every corner of this territory. I knew I needed help, even if it meant stepping out of my comfort zone. I rode into Redemption Creek, a place I usually only visited for supplies, seeking allies. My first stop was Mary's Saloon, a bustling, smoky establishment. Mary, the owner, was a woman cut from tough cloth, with a quick wit and eyes that saw through any man's pretense. She was an outsider, like me in a way, and she listened intently as I recounted finding Sarah and defying Blackwood. Her usual sharp expression softened, a flicker of compassion in her gaze. "Blackwood's a snake, all right," she muttered, wiping down the bar with a practiced hand. "Got half the sheriff's men on his payroll. But what you did, John, that took guts. Pure guts." She poured me a strong whiskey unasked. "What do you need?" "Help. Someone to speak up. Someone to stand with us," I replied, meeting her steady gaze. "He won't stop." Next I sought out Reverend Elijah, a quiet, dignified man whose sermons, though gentle, often held a powerful moral punch. I found him in his small, dusty study surrounded by books. The Reverend listened without interruption, his face grave. "God's children, every one of them," he murmured, his voice laced with sorrow. "This is a stain on our community, John. A profound sin." He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, a new resolve shining within them. "I will speak from the pulpit. I will remind them of our shared humanity, of the scriptures that call for justice. It may not move Blackwood, but it will move hearts." Slowly, cautiously, A few townsfolk, touched by the Reverend's sermons and whispers of my courage, began to offer their support. Not everyone, of course. Fear of Blackwood ran deep, but the seeds of resistance had been sown. Then, an unexpected silent ally found me. Thomas, a soft-spoken, skilled tracker. He approached me quietly, his gaze steady, his face etched with a wisdom that came from hardship. "I heard," he simply said. "You did good, Mr. Miller. My family. We can help. I know these lands, how to hide, how to stay ahead of Blackwood's dogs." Thomas's offer was more than just practical help. It was a profound act of solidarity, a shared understanding of freedom's true cost. I knew then that Sarah and I weren't truly alone anymore. The air in Redemption Creek grew thick with tension, a palpable fear. Blackwood, enraged by my defiance and the growing whispers of dissent, escalated his attacks. More of his men rode through town, their presence a silent, menacing threat. The local sheriff, a man deeply indebted to Blackwood, reluctantly issued a warrant for my arrest, fabricating charges of kidnapping and obstruction of justice. I was now an outlaw, simply for doing what was right. Sarah now clinging to me like a shadow, and I were forced into hiding. We moved between remote, abandoned cabins and hidden caves, guided by Thomas's intimate knowledge of the unforgiving terrain. He was a ghost in the shadows, always one step ahead. Mary, pretending to make deliveries, would discreetly leave supplies at prearranged drop-off points, her sly winks of encouragement a small comfort. Reverend Elijah, from his pulpit, continued to preach, his sermons now thinly veiled condemnations of Blackwood's tyranny, stirring the consciences of his congregation. The county was now openly divided. Some, gripped by fear of Blackwood's wrath, denounced me, publicly agreeing with the sheriff's narrative. They saw me as a troublemaker. But others, quietly inspired by my courage and the Reverend's powerful words, began to offer their support, providing food, blankets, and crucial information about Blackwood's movements. The fight for Sarah was no longer just mine. It had become a moral battle for the soul of Redemption Creek. The conflict culminated in a tense, dust-choked standoff at my isolated ranch. Blackwood himself, leading a large contingent of heavily armed men, rode onto the property, their faces grim and determined. "Miller!" Blackwood's voice boomed, sharp and menacing, cutting through the silence. "Hand over what's mine! This ends now!" But this time, I wasn't alone. Mary stood beside me on the porch, a Winchester rifle cradled in her arms, her eyes narrow and unwavering. Behind her, a small but resolute group of townsfolk had gathered, their faces grim but resolute, positioning themselves to defend the ranch. Reverend Elijah, his Bible clutched in his hand, stood amongst them, his presence a powerful moral bulwark. Thomas, utilizing his unparalleled tracking skills, had outmaneuvered some of Blackwood's flank, creating a crucial diversion that split the attacking force. In that climactic moment, facing overwhelming odds, I stepped forward, Sarah hidden just behind me, her small hand clutching my pant leg, trembling. I made an impassioned plea, not with threats but with a raw, honest appeal to their humanity. "Look at her." My voice, though not loud, carried across the tense silence. "She's a child. She deserves to live free like any of God's creatures. Is this what we've become? A county that turns a blind eye to such evil?" The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the whip of the wind. Blackwood's men shifted uneasily, a few of them avoiding his gaze. Then, a remarkable thing happened. One of Blackwood's own men, a younger man with a troubled conscience, visibly faltered, slowly lowering his rifle. "He's right, Mr. Blackwood," he muttered, his voice barely audible, but the words resonated. "This ain't right." That small, defiant act, combined with the united front of my unexpected allies and the unwavering, innocent gaze of Sarah, broke Blackwood's iron resolve. I saw the defeat in his eyes, the rage giving way to frustration. Cursing under his breath, his face contorted in a sneer, he eventually turned his horse. "Fall back," he roared, defeated not by brute force, but by the burgeoning conscience of the community. Sarah was safe. The county had been shocked, indeed, not just by my initial act of kindness, but by the quiet revolution it sparked, leading to a profound re-evaluation of their values and a new, hopeful path for Redemption Creek. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I truly belonged.